mentally or physically, success can be defined as getting up one more time after you've been knocked down over and over and over again. I'm T. Wood, and this is Triumphant Moments, where I highlight significant moments in life that are far beyond the surface to inform, encourage, and inspire people to triumph over their life's challenges. With me today is Dr. Parham. He is the current president of California State University, Dominguez Hills. He holds a bachelor's degree in social ecology from University of California, Irvine, a master's in counseling psychology from Washington University in St. Louis, and a PhD in counseling psychology from Southern University at Carbondale. He is a licensed psychologist with more than 35 years as a scholar and a practitioner. There's a tremendous number of accolades that I could highlight right now. However, personally, to me, what stands out is his love for the culture, knowledge he's willing to provide, and his unique leadership skills. Welcome, my brother, Dr. Parham. How are you?
T. Woods in the house. I'm delighted to be here. I thank you for honoring me with an invitation to join your show. And I'm here to just wax and wane, brother, and see if we can't share some knowledge with our listeners and uplift everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, let's go ahead and jump right on into it. If you were to describe your upbringing in your household, how would you describe it? You know, siblings?
So I had a very happy upbringing. My mother and my father, I was born in New York, St. Albans, New York, right out on 167th Street. Address 144-67 180th Street. I haven't been there since I was 3 years old, but brother got one in memory, so I just remember that. Out in Jamaica, Queens. And
Gotcha.
My mother and my father split when I was about 3 years old. And so I was the third of four children. So my mother grabbed all four of us. We moved out to Los Angeles, California, which is where my grandmother, her mother was.
Okay.
And we grew up in LA. So I've been in LA since I was about three, other than, traveling around in grad school and then worked on the East Coast for a while. But back to growing up. So grew up in a single parent household. My sister's oldest. I've got one older brother and one younger brother. So there's four of us.
Okay.
Financial constraints were real. But I'm always blessed by that. I mean, I had one of those mothers who was just one of those special people. And her name was Sadie Parham. So when you hear the Spinners sing that song about Sadie, Don't You Know We Love You? When she left this world to transition to the realm of the ancestors, that's what's actually on her tombstone. Sweet Sadie, don't you know we love you? And I owe a lot to her. Certainly was my best friend and just a life teacher around a whole range of things. And this is a woman who raised four kids by herself.
Wow.
Worked for the government 32 years, other than taking time off for, having kids in between.
Right.
Never earned more than $18,000 a year. Got four kids, went to college, three finished, two with PhDs, and nobody on drugs, nobody in jail, nobody in the gang.
Come on.
So when you talk about my upbringing and how it worked, because people worry about, I can't do it with one. This woman did it with four.
Man, come on.
Still got through. So I ain't got nothing but love for her and blessings for my background. And this place we call Los Angeles, that was a special place to grow up because it was such a multicultural mecca and helped me really develop a sense of connectedness to people from different cultural worldviews and traditions, and just the respect for people's humanity, I think, from different colors. So that was my background growing up. Loved it.
Now, then when you're looking at that, I believe we can both basically say, safe to say, that there were many different temptations or many different challenges around, let's say, the neighborhood, within the neighborhood, places you may travel. I am trying to figure out in my head right now, how did Miss Sadie keep you all from being exposed to that? Or were you exposed to it and you just found a way to just survive that? All the things that are on the outside and things that around that time growing up, Los Angeles?
See, I don't think any parent can keep a child so insulated.
Thank you.
That you aren't exposed to some of that. The challenge is not simply how to predict the environment, even though people try to move around geographically to see if they can expose it. But
right.
As much as you could be at a party across town and doing something else or driving me, so right. Trouble follows you almost anywhere. The real challenge is to be able to have enough, principled behavior right. that is anchored in a way that honors the value and the sacrifice that, in this case, my mama was making. Mm-hmm. To when you get to those forks in the road, you make important and tough choices that open up opportunities and limit others. So you're really setting aside that risk vulnerability because you try not to put yourself in those risky positions that are going to wind you up, either in trouble with the law or something else. Mm-hmm. You also try as much as possible to build for yourself this kind of intellectual, emotional, and almost spiritual force field, so that when things come your way, you are navigating that and filtering it through the conceptual template that you already have in your head. Your mind is always the strongest thing. Right. And it's that conceptual template. If ideas are the substance of behavior, let me say that again. If ideas are the substance of behavior, then the goal is not simply to react like a pinball to every little situation that goes on in your life. The goal is to step back a minute in the same way that brothers and sisters sequentially analyze. Mm-hmm. You step back, analyze a situation, you filter it through the conceptual template you have in your head that is anchored in those values mm-hmm. that you've been trained with mm-hmm. and socialized with. And then whatever decision you make becomes much easier because you're not simply reacting, you're really coming out of who you believe you are at the core of your being. And so that's what's important. And that's how you're able to do that.
Now, when I sum it up in my mind to what you just broke down, does the type of lens you're looking through play a role in that?
Oh, absolutely. The lens, the cultural worldview has a way of shaping reality for everybody.
Thank you.
So that part of my makeup, I've always been a person who has a big heart. Right. So when most people, Brother Wood, see things where they feel it and then they run it through their head so they make rational decisions. Mm-hmm. I'm the opposite. I think it and then I run it through my heart to see whether it makes sense or not. Mm-hmm. So I do that. So that's one piece. The other piece that goes on in terms of perspective is I have a half full, not a half empty glass. And whether I was a child, now part of the optimist in me always sees the optimistic side and never, I'm never the pessimist. In some cases, even not even as realistic, because I'm always hoping and trying to keep hope alive, as Jesse would say, right?
Yep.
So that becomes there.
Right.
But even as I lead now a university, that same value system about the half full glass right. rather than the half empty one right. colors and shapes the way in which I lead the university. So if you ask anybody on my team, they'll tell you Dr. Parham is not interested in 8 out of 10 reasons why something cannot be done. Mm-hmm. He's only interested in 2 out of 10 why it can. Find me the 2 out of 10 why we can do this, not the 8 out of 10 why we can't. And so that's a value that has gone on, for really my whole life. So the perspective matters and the way in which you come to it,
right?
To life and life circumstance matters. But also you have to have a sense of confidence, a sense of efficacy, a sense of agency, if you will, that allows you to be confident enough to navigate the pathway to productivity and success and believe that you can be confident at being able to do it. So I don't ever worry about stubbing my toe or making a mistake. I don't ever worry about running into a rough, space. I got to be able to move past those rocks of resignation and the stones of stagnation to be able to get to where I'm going, as long as I got my eyes set on the prize. Right. And I'm not going to let nobody turned me around. I mean, that's kind of how you move through that.
Right. And for my listeners, we all have to understand this is a particular jewel alert that I can't let just fluff away. The factor of having confidence in whatever your morals are or whatever you live by, whatever your creed may be, that is part of what describes your internal compass and helps guide you when you can't necessarily see everything around you. That is something that we must stand on. Because think about it. How many times do we hesitate on decisions that we're just not confident in or we're nervous about? And then you look at things where people are able to flow through things and you wonder how. It's almost like repetition is second nature, but repetition builds that confidence.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, Doc, I got to go with you on that. I got to support that. Now, I noticed that you made a transition. Let's step to your collegiate studies. I noticed that you made a transition from California to St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is there anything that stood out about that college that made you make that transition? Usually, sometimes I see people go just because they see a friend go there. But is there anything to you that stood out for you to attend?
So the answer is yes, but let me say yes and put pause because I need to back the tape up a little bit.
Okay.
Because there's an important tidbit that I don't want to miss with our listeners here.
Okay.
So what do you call it? A jewel moment? Let me drop a jewel.
Jewel alert. Jewel alert.
So I've stylized a piece of African wisdom over time.
Okay.
And it says, hear me now, life at its best is a creative synthesis of opposites in fruitful harmony. Let me say that again. Life at its best is a creative synthesis of opposites in fruitful harmony. Now, it has a lot of different meanings, but one of them is that sometimes your greatest strength can also be your greatest weakness. Sometimes your greatest weakness, your greatest strength. And so I was blessed growing up to be a very, bright child. I mean, I could go to class and basically pay attention and still do better than most people who studied all night long, right? Mm-hmm. But being a bright child, if that was my best strength, right, it was also my worst nightmare in some context because it made me a lazy student.
Come on.
And there's so much talent in the Black community that exists because we have so many kids who are so bright, but also don't have to work hard to be able to navigate the spaces they're in. But at some point, you develop those habits so that you become, right, a lazy consumer, lazy student, lazy something, not working to your full potential. Mm. And so, you have to move past that. So I remember growing up, my mama would say, boy, you get these kind of grades, mostly, A's and B's, and you do no work. She said, if you did just a little bit of work, you'd be brilliant. And of course, I was like every other kid. Yeah, Mom, in one ear and out the other.
Yeah.
So I want to fast forward into college because I'm a product of both public and parochial school in grade school and high school.
Right.
And then started college and then transferred into from California State University, Long Beach, locally, where I was thinking about a criminology major and pursuing a career in the criminal justice system.
Okay.
And decided that I had a experience there working in a halfway house and then a community psych clinic, and then decided psychology is my thing. Mm-hmm. So I transferred to the University of California, Irvine. And this is where I want to back the tape up because that's where I met my first mentor. And so part of what you want to do is think about aligning yourself with a mentor, what we call in African tradition an MZ, right? Respected elder.
Come on.
And Joe White, the father of the Black psychology movement, was my first mentor. Yes. And I took Joe's class my first year there in African American psychology, got an A out of him, in fact, A+ out of him, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
And about 2 or 3 months after class, I'm walking down the walkway and he's coming the other way, I guess after about lunch, and we meet kind of in the middle of the walkway. Right. And I said, as any respectful student would do, hey, Dr. White, how you doing?
Right.
And he simply walked up to me, T. Wood, and he put his arm around me. He said, young brother, that's what he called me. He said, young brother. He said, you have too much talent and you are too brilliant to be running around here playing basketball, chasing women. Now, remember that seed got planted by my mama years ago.
Yes.
Now I got mentor reinforcing that.
Right.
And he said, you'd already mastered my class. So he said, I want you to come follow me. Now, the last person said, come follow me was walking on water in the Bible. And Joe ain't quite walked on water yet, but he was pretty close. And over the course of the next several weeks and months, he took me up to his office in the social science tower at the university. Yes. And he diagrammed my whole future up on about a 20 by 30 chalkboard. So y'all got dry erase boards now. We had chalkboards back in the day.
Yeah, well, you said I turned like chalk. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So he diagrammed my whole future on little chalkboards right by his desk. And he said, you've already done well on your book, so we're going to tighten up on the rest of your grades so you're excelling. He said, you've mastered my class. I'm going to make you my teaching assistant as an undergrad. He said, and then once we do that, we're going to send you to graduate school. And we're going to graduate school, we're going to get a master's degree. And then we're going to send you to get a PhD. And when I send you to be a psychologist, I'm not sending you just to be clinically good, because you never know where your options are going to be. He said, the key to mental health is always having a broad range of choices and options.
There you go.
And he said, so I want you to be clinically good, academic instruction good, research good, and then the rest of it will just kind of flow in. So I went to grad school trying to be the best. And then he said, after grad school, he said, you'll be able to write books, you'll be able to teach, you'll be able to do your research, do your clinical work, see patients, do that kind of stuff. And then after he got to doing all this other stuff, he said to me, it's a true story. He said, one day, you're going to be a bad mother, but don't you ever forget to be a basic brother. What was he saying? He's saying, even as you excel and you have a measure of success, don't ever forget where you come from. And don't ever forget to be able to kind of connect with folk. And so he also told me, he said, excellence will bring you opportunity. He says, you will never have to tell anybody how good you are. He said, just focus on producing excellence, and excellence will bring you opportunity. And so when I left, and then I worked with him over 2 years, right, and mentored me, Washington University in St. Louis is one of the schools I got accepted to, and I ended up accepting their offer to go there. Right. In graduate school, it was a very good counseling psych program. A lot of folk who were big in the field were there then. And WashU as an institution is called the Harvard of the Midwest. I mean, that's a lot of academic, horsepower in that institution. Right. And then from WashU, I was applying to my doctoral program after that, and left to go to Southern Illinois University in Carbondale. Okay. And so Southern Illinois, and this is what a lot of folk don't know, we on an undergraduate level, we rate universities for like whole institutions. But on a graduate or professional school, you have to look at, who does med school, the American Medical Association, who does the American Bar Association, who does the American Psychological Association. And Carbondale was a top 5 psych department back then. So I got in and got admitted and tried to excel and did my work and did my clinical work and learned how to teach and learned how to do research and did all that. And then came out, and then came back home to California actually to do my internship. So psychologists do internships like physicians do residency. Right. So I did that piece and then finished my dissertation, did all that. And once I was a doctor at 27 years of age. And then as I was applying for jobs all around the country, locally, down south, back east, whatever, I ended up accepting a position as an assistant professor on the faculty at the University of Pennsylvania. So I had an Ivy League appointment my first year out of school. So everything Joe said came true. Come on now. Everything he said came true. So you talk about the journey of moving forward. Yes. Moving through those schools was, first of all, planting the seed that it was possible for me to do that. It was disciplining my behavior in a way that he said, you got too much talent to be running around here playing basketball, chasing women. Come follow me. So he had to put something in and said, discipline your behavior to produce excellence that you're capable of doing. And then you'll just see where opportunities open up. And that's really been the story of my career right there.
Is it safe to say that moment was the key moment that ignited that fire?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
See, I've come to a clear understanding. I want to switch lanes here, Doc. Right. I've come to the conclusion that, like, a clear understanding that as we continue to just simply live, you're going to face challenges, and many times those challenges come unexpected. Can you think of a challenge in your life that stands out that you faced?
Oh, for sure. So behind me, you'll see this picture of Brother Cornel West, a good friend of mine. Okay. And Cornel argues in his writing, and I want to say this because so many of our listeners pay attention to the personalities they see on TV, but they don't study and embrace principle. Ooh. It's like they love Dr. King. Jewel alert, they love Dr. King.
Ooh, I gotta say it,
but they don't study and embrace his principle. They love Brother Malcolm, you got on my wall, but they don't study and embrace him, don't read the thing he wrote. Same thing with Cornell. So Cornell argues that there's a duality to life experience. And in life, you will always have instances, right, on the good side of kind of positive energy, that spiritual energy that's there. But the flip side of that is there are instances of unjustified suffering, unmerited pain, and undeserved harm. Let me say that again. Unjustified suffering, unmerited pain, and undeserved harm. The question is not, do things happen in your life, but rather, how do you sustain some movement or momentum in the face of whatever adversity you are confronting? And so with that mindset, I've had a pretty blessed and privileged life. And even as I have colleagues, you met Dr. Jackson, you know, one of my homeboys from LA, and Irvine, who's now in the DC area. We used to always say that the only thing that will slow us down is tragedy. And even that's only going to stop us for a moment, because we're on our way to Success Avenue. We're going to be in that space, the mindset, right? Ideas are the substance of behavior. And so in that adversity, whenever adversity has come, you know, it's been like, whoa, this is like deep, but I've always tried to figure out, okay, how am I going to kind of navigate with it? And you've got to be able to employ what Wade Nobles calls 3 cultural dispositions. Okay. Sometimes you have to improvise. Right. So if plan A ain't working, you got to go to plan B. Right. Sometimes you got to transform. So you can take a negative situation and transform it into something else. Lay people call that, right, taking a lemon and making lemonade out of it, right? And then sometimes you just got to rise above it, where you got to transcend it and move past it. Brothers on the corner got a great saying. They say it just be like that sometimes. Sometimes it just be like that. Ain't nothing you can do about it. Can't change it. You just got to rise above it and keep on moving. Right. So now to the specificity. So theoretically, that's kind of what I believe. That's part of that conceptual template I talked about. But I've been in a space where even 2 years ago, I got, you know, knocked on my backside with a revelation that I got diagnosed with cancer. Now, I don't drink, smoke, do drugs, work out, you know, regularly. Have always been, you know, regularly healthy. Right. And got diagnosed with cancer. And I'm like, whoa. And once we were trying to figure out why I was having these, you know, headaches and massive stuff, like taking the right side of my head just off. Well, ended up having a tumor down here that was hitting on this nerve branch block. Gotcha. That was just creating so much pain. In fact, and I've seen this in movies, T. Wood. Never thought it could happen, where you have been in so much pain, like when they be torturing you, you pass out. Right. Well, I passed out 3 times. Passed out from the pain being so bad. And then it's like, we got to do something with this. So finally, we got diagnosed, and I'm running around here with cancer. Well, sometimes people will go, why me? What did I do? Right. Why not me? You know, there's nothing special about me that I wouldn't get afflicted with. Everybody got a cross to bear, mental preparation. And so I went through life. And so I tell Cornell, I wasn't really joking with him. I was serious when I was giving him some love and saying that he reminds us in his writing that we should never allow misery to have the last word. Let me say that again. You should never allow misery to have the last word. And so I decided that cancer was not going to have the last word in my life. No. And it wasn't, you know, you feel it in your spirit. I'm like, God and the ancestors ain't through with me yet. So we're just going to move on this journey. We're going to put our boxing gloves on. We're going to fight. And I went through 6 months of chemo, did all that. It is every bit of the crazy. It is a monster to go through that. Right. And it makes you sick and does all that. But I got up every day that I wasn't in that OR getting the interthecal piece in my spine, because they were worried about it traveling up into the base of my brain. Also, because the tumor was right up here, right, in the throat and the oral larynx and the right by your carotid sheath. And went to work every day, put a coat and tie on, went and led my university. And I'm a brand new president coming into space and now getting diagnosed with cancer. I'm like, what's up with that? But what brother say? It just be like that sometimes. You just got to transcend it and keep on moving, do what you can do. So my part was, I can't do anything about the cancer. What I can do is put up the best fight, get the best diagnosis, get the best information, make the most informed decision, about the treatment protocols I need to adhere to, trust my doctors and physicians, and then do what they say and stick to it. And so I am now, this summer coming up, I will be hopefully, and I'm knocking on wood, 2 years cancer free.
Right here with you.
I've been in the space, and the scans so far have been clean. But again, it's about, you know, the mental preparation that you go through. And I've had my doctors tell me, in fact, my internal med person told me this at my last physical. He said, you have weathered this better than probably 95 to 98% of the people who have that diagnosis you have and go through that chemotherapy treatment that you've been through. And you've gotten through it. And that's just, that ain't nothing but God and the ancestors watching out for them, brother. So I feel blessed. And they just ain't finished with me yet. I got more work to do on behalf of our peeps. And I'm just loving being in the seat that I'm in. So it's adversity. It's a monster. But, you know, I always believe ancestors been through worse than this.
Come on.
You know, we've been through worse than this. I keep a picture of Brother Malcolm on the wall. And in my office at the university, I have a picture of the slave dungeons in Elmina and Cape Coast in Ghana. Because it always, T Wood, it reminds me to contextualize struggle. See, now we run into little inconvenience and we're ready to like, and go crazy.
Exactly.
What I'm saying is, if the ancestors could go through what they went through to help us arrive at this particular space in time,
come on now,
how dare me not muster the strength and the courage and the temerity to say, I'm going to look this in the face and I'm going to keep on fighting. And don't know whether you're going to win the battle. But I'm not going out. I ain't going out like that. Outcome is never guaranteed.
Come on.
But what is guaranteed is if you lie down and just do nothing, it'll take you out.
Come on.
And that's how life experience is.
I got to harp on something that you just said towards the end of that. Still not necessarily having the outcome of the so-called win. If I'm going to fall, I would rather fall, but fall still fighting, you know, and that is a perception. That is a concept that I really roll by. When you said strengthen yourself, I want to make sure my listeners understand you were not able to just survive that and continue to survive that based on your DNA and your body structure that was being strengthened. A lot of that came here that you had to be. Doc, is it safe to say that no matter how strong the body is, because we all know how mentally you could start worrying yourself to where you have somatic feelings in the term of mental health, that is when mentally, you know, you could believe something, like it literally you start to feel it, somatic. But is it safe to say that a strong mind can raise the chances of overcoming something that is physically attacking you?
Strong mind is essential. Because it's half the battle. It not only manages your stress, but it helps you muster the courage you will need to move through adversity. I mean, a strong mind doesn't take away fear. Fear is a natural response to something that could potentially take your life and take you out of here. It's normal to be afraid. But what courage does is help you cope with it and triumph through the fear. To keep on keeping on in the face of adversity. When you go to church on Sunday and you hear the preacher or the gospel choir singing, it may be darkest in the night, but when the morning comes, everything gonna be all right. It's about persevering through adversity in those moments in our life. And so life is just like that. And Cornell was right. You always have unjustified suffering, unmerited pain, undeserved harm. The boss ain't gonna like you. Relationships ain't gonna work out. You're gonna lose a job. You might have cost yourself a thing. You might have stumbled your toe. But every moment, my brother, is a teaching moment. Every moment is a teaching moment. And so what you do is you take those as the teachable moments and you just learn from them and say, how am I gonna now move forward and move past it so that I can keep on keeping on?
Can pride, ego, those things come into play of deterring you from pressing forward? Can you see those things blocking an individual?
So the short answer is yes. And, you know, part of what there is, I try to avoid getting into spaces where I talk about that's the wrong way or the right way to do it, right? Yeah. Gotcha. In African tradition and psychology, we have kind of ordered and disordered behavior, like what's ordered and what's disordered, right?
Here we go.
Ordered behavior are things that really help and facilitate the human organism. So when I go through situations, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. What I'm saying is, if I'm trying to get to this goal and achieve this outcome, what I want to know is what behaviors, what feelings, what attitudes can I employ that either facilitate or inhibit me getting to that goal. And once I can interrogate that, I try to stay on the facilitation side, get away from the inhibition side, and go from there. So when you talk about pride, a certain level of pride, right, in moderation is good because it helps you feel good about accomplishment. Right. But too much pride, right? Too much ego, too much, right?
Yeah.
Self-aggrandizement, all that is it gets you into a space where it's not there. What you don't want to do is move to the point of being so narcissistic, right, that you can't see anything other than yourself.
Jewel alert.
But you also don't want to be, right, so other indulged that you neglect yourself as well, you know, because you're so enmeshed in other people's issues that you don't really take care of yourself as well. You got to have some self-help in there as well. So you've got to find the balance in the middle. Again, life at its best is a creative synthesis of opposites and fruitful harmony.
When we take a step back and we look at everything, well, specifically what you experienced in your battle with cancer, in your push with cancer, and your perseverance that you continue to show till today, to be able to sit here and smile on this camera, you know, with positivity in your voice. When you take a look at that, this is a quote that I live by. Sometimes in life, and I say it everywhere I go, sometimes in life we have to pull from what we've been through in order to conquer what we're currently going through. And I'm looking at that situation that you overcame and continue to do every day. What is something in your mind right now that stands out that you would pull and use just pressing forward from what you've been through in your battle with cancer?
So part of it is, I think, the fact that I got surprised and shocked and really gut punched with the diagnosis is a good piece to go that, again, life will present you with those instances of the unjustified suffering, unmerited pain, undeserved harm. So that's true. Right. What also I pull from that is that while everybody surrounded me with nothing but love and support, that old adage, what goes around comes around, sure does matter. Because in that respect, I've tried to live my life loving on other people, try to extend myself, be a servant leader, do that piece. And there was nothing but love coming from every corner of the globe that I know people in, who were sending me notes and encouragement and praise and whatever. And, you know, as I talk to God and I talk to the ancestors and do that, they just have a way of letting you know that, no, we got you on this. And so part of that is a deep faith, right? The substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen, right? Right? And so part of what you do is you just have to have faith, right, in that process. And you do, and know that, you know, as you're on that kind of spiritual journey, that then my journey becomes a teaching moment for some other people who have their own adversities to go through. And, you know, while I had to struggle with that, it also made sense, I think, as I get ready to go through almost every challenge, it goes back to that piece I was trying to drop earlier about the need to contextualize struggle. Because now when you run into adversity, COVID, right?
Right.
We got COVID jumping up on us and people are like, oh, you know. Now, partly, I'm a psychologist. I manage crisis for a living. I've been in that space where I've had to decide, am I going to put this person in the hospital against their will because they think about taking their life tonight? Or am I going to trust their judgment and sleep with one eye open, hoping that I made the right decision and they don't go do something right crazy?
Measuring their diagnosis.
I manage life and death for a living, right? All of my professional career.
Yes. So
all those are teachable moments that allow you to learn how to navigate crisis, how to negotiate that space, how to seek consultation, how to view broad opinion, and how to make the most informed choice that you can that is principled and anchored And again, that set of values that you set up in that conceptual template that then provide you a pathway forward. Now, is it always the right decision? You don't know, because right is always in the perspective of the beholder. But as long as it's a principled decision,
come on now.
As long as it is a principled decision,
come on,
right, then it's there. I mean, we're in the midst of COVID. T. Will, stay with me on this one now.
Gotcha.
You got half the country talking about we want to open up schools.
Okay.
And businesses, we want them opened up yesterday, right? Because they're losing money and the parents are tired of being home with the kids. And now we got tremendous respect for teachers now, because we know how hard it is to do what they do every day.
They do, right?
And we you know, and this is the irony of this now. Let me make a small digression here. Okay. We pay athletes who entertain us millions of dollars a year to entertain us with sport.
Facts.
And they got degree to first, some of them. But teachers who we trust with the intellectual growth and development of our babies got to go on strike to earn $50,000 a year. Ooh. Something wrong with that picture. Ooh. But now we have tremendous respect for teachers going through this space. But back to the issue now. Let me quit digressing.
Because it's hard.
In the midst of COVID, as COVID is a crisis, the crisis didn't derail me because we've been through crisis before. So when you talk about, can you go into the reservoir of your experience and pull it out?
Come on.
And say, what do you need to go through?
Come on.
As you've been through crisis and know you can navigate that and you know how to navigate the space, right. It may be a new context, but you know, generally the principle is still the same about how you move through it.
It doesn't change.
It doesn't change. And whether it's budget cuts, whether it's financial crisis, even some of the social unrest we've been through, we got a tripartite crisis going on in the country right now. With all the social unrest and George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, and all the folk that, you know, too numerous a name that came before them. This ain't new. It said America's just finally waking up to the stuff. What is, however, is the coalition of people that are crossing demographic boundaries.
Right.
How the Black Lives Matter. I haven't seen that in my life. And I grew up in that marvelous militancy of the 60s and 70s. I haven't seen it in my life in that kind of math. Wow. That's the piece that's there. So yes, you can pull on a reservoir of experiences that help you navigate future challenges that you will have to face. And that's what our leaders want to do. But let me wax and wane on something else for a moment. I know you got other questions for me, and I'll be glad to stay on as long as you like. But in that space, the biggest problem we face as a people, I'm talking about African descent people now.
Gotcha.
You turn on the news every day. You'll hear drugs, gangs, violence, poverty,
right,
racism, white supremacy. They're all big obstacles.
Right.
In my mind, they're big obstacles, but not the biggest. Right. The biggest obstacle we face as a people is what I call the need for mental liberation.
Here we go.
Somebody got to understand, right? Somebody got to understand that when the first thing an enslaver does when they capture people is they lock down your body, hands, ankles, sometimes a chain around your neck. But the very next thing they go after is putting a chain on your mind, a shackle on your mind.
Mental
so that even when they give you the illusion of emancipation, let me say that again, you didn't hear me. Even when they give you the illusion of emancipation, 1863 or 5, wherever you were in the country when they did that, and you got the news, as long as they still got a shackle on this, you will always act in opposition to your own best interest because they still got your mind. So I try to work with folk and help folk understand that that becomes our biggest challenge. And what we can't control is really the heart and minds of some other people who are just intent on doing evil. What we can control is our own behavior. Marcus Garvey was clear, brother, when he argued that chance never satisfies the hope of a suffering people. It's only through hard work, persistence, and self-reliance by which the oppressed ever realize the light of their own freedom. So not only am I hanging out with Marcus Garvey on one side, but I want to introduce the people and your listeners to go pick up this book by Carter G. Woodson. It is called The Miseducation of the Negro. That book is so important. The Miseducation of the Negro. It is so important in my mind as an African-centered psychologist that every home that's Black in America needs to have some kind of spiritual book on one end of the bookshelf. Don't matter to me whether it's a Bible, a Quran, or something. Find some kind of spiritual book so you know something's bigger than you out there in the universe. And on the other end, got to be Carter G. Woodson. Because Carter G. Woodson argued 1933, if I remember the date right on his text, when he wrote the original one. But he argued that if you allow a people to control the way you think, you don't have to assign them to an inferior status. If necessary, they will seek it for themselves. And so as I fashion my own sense that the biggest challenge we face is the need for mental liberation, part of what we're trying to do in everything we do, whether I'm doing therapy, whether I'm teaching a class, whether I'm talking to a crowd of 50 your listeners, right, on triumphant moments, or an arena full of like 5 or 10,000 people, which I've done lots of times in my life. I'm always trying to think about how can I give them some keys to systematically unlock those shackles of conceptual incarceration that keep them locked in the abyss of the way things have always been in their life rather than the way things can be.
There you go. There you go. Listeners, listen up, man. It's funny. We say how we are many times a product of our environment. People get it so misunderstood. Our environment transcends far beyond what we see and feel in the elements. Our environment actually exists here.
And so you gotta help people remember it, and that's particularly when you have people who come from circumstances that are poverty-stricken and violence-ridden, and I mean, there's lots of stuff that just goes on, and you feel sorry for folk. But I'm here to remind your listeners today, brother, that circumstances are places we come from, not who we are at the core of our being. And that's why it's important if you go back and you look at some of the work by Brother Frantz Fanon. Fanon said there were 3 critical questions everybody had to be able to ask and answer. Let me say that again. 3 critical questions everybody had to be able to ask and answer. Number 1, who am I? What is my nature, my essence, my character? Number 2, am I who I say I am? Meaning, what is the level of convergence and divergence between what I say and what I do? Right? Are you having a high degree of congruence, or like James Brown used to say, you just talking loud, saying nothing. You talk about that big apple, but afraid to take a bite, right? Congruence. And the third question, am I all I ought to be, is about with all of the potential that I have been blessed with.
Right.
Am I actualizing my potential in a way that allows me to get the best out of myself in each and every circumstance? And so if you're clear about who you are at the core of your being, right, you may not be in that space. See, I think people may come from violent surroundings but still have peaceful hearts. You may come from poverty but still have richness in your spirit.
Yes.
Right? You may come from an environment where you don't have a lot of books and intellectual capital, but it doesn't make you any less bright. You may fail a test, but it doesn't make you not smart. You may commit a crime, but it doesn't make you a criminal. Criminal activity is what you did. It is not who you are at the core of your being. And as soon as a system can convince you that who you are is a function of the behavior you engaged in, rather than really helping you understand at the core of your being who are you.
That's that chain.
Then they'll label you a criminal. They'll label you not smart. They'll label you dumb. They'll label you this or that. When people got to understand circumstances are places we come from, not who we are at the core of your being. And there's a fundamental difference between who we are and what we do.
Look, when I step back, we're at a point where there's something that I created. I call it encouragement for free. And no matter everything that we've gone over, Dr. P, what is something right now for all our listeners? It could be something, a creed you live by. It could be something that we've gone over through the segment of the show. What is some encouragement for free that you can provide, no matter what they're going through, to all our listeners?
Encouragement for free.
Yes, sir.
Is this a jewel alert?
This is absolutely a jewel alert. I'm holding on to my seat right now.
So if it's important to understand who you are at the core of your being, then I want to remind our listeners that each of you, brothers and sisters, is a seed of divinely inspired possibility. which when nurtured in its proper context can and will grow into the fullest expression of all you are supposed to become. And so the organizations, the families, the other things that you are part of should be the nurturing soil into which your seed of divinely inspired possibility is placed. And if we water it with the drops of intellectual nourishment, if we give it and sprinkle it with the values, right, the miracle grow in our life. If we take the tools and we till the soil and take the weeds of social distraction out of our life to get us caught up in doing some of this crazy stuff we be doing sometimes. If we give it just enough sunlight of affirmation, help people feel good about who they are, and just enough shade of critique so that when they get offline, you pull them by the collar and say, straighten up, young man or young woman. And then you just stand back and watch them grow until the fullest expression of all they are supposed to become. If each of us, T. Wood, is a seed of divinely inspired possibility,
come on,
then what we have to do is think about creating the nurturing environments and the soil that allow those seeds to prosper. Now, as life would have it, there are always these crazy incidents we talked about.
Right.
Because all of us have seen a plant withering on the side of the road. Folk with the green thumb notice, right? Maybe it got too much sunlight.
Right.
Felt too good about themselves. A little narcissistic, got caught up, right? Getting too arrogant. Maybe they had too much shady critique. They got abused as a child, got, something wrong. They were unjustly accused by the police, whatever. And you see plants withering on the side of the road. But a plant that made a mistake, failed a test in school, doesn't lose its divinity. So green thumb people understand, T. Wood, that if I were to go and I dig that plant up down at the bulb level, even with all the weeds, take all the weeds off, take them away, clean it up, still got the bulb, and I take that bulb and I plant it in some nurturing soil. What happens to it if I give it some good water, not the nasty stuff it's been exposed to and the toxicity in its environment? If I give it some more miracle grown, some nutrients, some values, some indoctrination that helps them really, develop a level of mental fortitude and emotional, fortitude there. Give them a little courage, little inspiration that's in there. If I give them just enough sunlight of affirmation, just enough shade of critique, and I still continue to till the soil and take the weeds of distraction, what happens to that bulb? It'll grow and continue to sprout. You do not lose your divinity because you stubbed your toe, because you failed a test, because you committed a crime, because you had a child out of wedlock, because whatever you did in life.
Come on.
Right? It does not lose fundamentally who you are. And that's why it's so important to remember what Fanon said about those three questions. You got to understand, who am I? Am I who I say I am? And am I all I ought to be? So I hope people understand that each of you, my friends, is that seed of divinely inspired possibility. And if you can just find a way to be nurtured in a proper context, you can and will grow into the fullest expression of all you are supposed to become.
Come on. Listeners, listen. Dr. P, first and foremost, I want to thank you for coming here on the show. You are family. You know that I will be reaching out to you. We will be communicating. Is there any place on social media that people can seek you out if they wanted to follow any projects that you've done, any particular books that are out there, or things that or some that you may have anticipation of creating, or anything out there that you could put out there right now?
So I only have, most of what I've written, I think, are in journal articles. I only have, I don't know, probably 6 books, maybe. I don't have that many. But most of those you can find, just Google Thomas A. Parham or Dr. Parham, and you'll find some of that on Amazon. Everything's available there.
Gotcha.
Most of the other stuff is in libraries and journal articles, but what I've been proud of is most of my scholarship is about people of African descent. It's about multicultural issues and multicultural counseling, and about respecting the dignity and humanity of everybody. So they can certainly find that. I tried to stay off of social media all my career, T. Wood.
Okay.
And my team members talked me into getting on social media. So I do have a Twitter account.
Whoa!
So I'm on Twitter every now and then.
Okay.
So if I pull up my phone and I look at, let me see if I can just even pull up Twitter for your listeners here. Where's my Twitter account? Just so they know. Gotcha. Yeah, that's T Parham on Twitter right there. So my handle there is at CSUDH. So that stands for Cal State University, Dominguez Hills. Mm-hmm. So at CSUDH, Prez, Prez, Parham. Mm-hmm. And that's my Twitter account. So if folk want to follow me and look at what we're doing, that's where I'm at. And so I'm always trying to affirm some folk. If you look on the latest tweets I put on there, we were celebrating Women's History Month and thanking them for the sacrifices they make. We were speaking out against the violence against brothers and sisters in the Asian American community. Mm-hmm. You know, if we were celebrating the perseverance of our students moving through this COVID piece to be able to keep on keeping on in the face of that adversity. Mm-hmm. I had to put out a couple pieces that I put in the LA Sentinel newspaper called The Battle for the Soul of a Nation with this election that we just went on. Right. Where folk had to really come to grips with the fact that we really were in a struggle for the soul of this nation. Yes. And the kind of scandalous inconsistency that this democracy experiment has been engaged in for a while. So you'll see some of that's out there. Gotcha. But it's always about trying to use my platform to try to help define and frame the discourse on what people ought to be, you know, experiencing and thinking about, but always with a mind on trying to support the dignity and humanity of all members of the human family. And I can't leave the show today without complimenting you, brother, because our people do not have forums like this to be able to not only share thoughts, but also when you talk about triumphant moments, right? We have a lot of pain in our space. We have a lot of wounded spirits in our community. We have a lot of folk who've just been through stuff.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right. And so when you have triumphant moments and the platform that you've developed to help people do that, absolutely, then anytime you can use other people's stories as an example to let other folk know that, yes, you can do it too. I think it provides encouragement. It provides support. It provides reassurance. And it provides really a level of elevated mood. Yes, where people can say, yes, if they can do it, I can do it. It's that notion of universality we talk about, right, in group therapy. Right. And so if we've been helpful to anybody on today's show, right, today they can rise above their condition, right, and move through it. That everything you need to be successful is already in you, given to you by the ancestors and the Creator. All you got to do is access it. It's what Fukuyama calls that self-healing power in his book, Self-Healing Power in Therapy. Everybody has a battery charge, that spiritual energy that they can seek in that reservoir to bring it out. Mm-hmm. And lastly, I'll say, even for people in my positions, people say, well, he don't talk like a university president. Why not? Because I was a black man before. I'm going to be just like Brother Malcolm. I didn't come here in life as a Republican or Democrat. I didn't come as a Mason or Elk. Didn't come as a Kappa or Q or Alpha or Sigma. Didn't come whatever job. I came here as a black man. And I'm going to leave this world as a black man, right? Respecting everybody's humanity, whether you are white, black, blue, brown, or purple in this world. Right. But I always remind people about Brother Fanon. Beyond those three questions, Fanon said that each generation, T. Wood, out of relative obscurity, must reach out and seek to fulfill its legacy or betray it. Right. We occupy the places we do right now in this world because the ancestors sacrificed to make sure that we could be at this space and time. How dare us give up? How dare us get frustrated? How dare us engage in some of the foolishness we engage in as a people? Run around with colors, you know, Crips and Bloods and red and blue and fighting over concrete, right? We don't own a square inch of taking lives when you don't understand that you should not be subjecting yourself to violence and crime in a way that violates the legacy that you've been blessed to inherit. So if each of us has an opportunity to fulfill a legacy or betray it, then our challenge, my challenge, is not simply to be a servant leader, but to go through this world managing my university, using my platform, right, to be able to fulfill the legacy that I've been blessed to inherit. And I thank you for having me today on your show, brother. It's been an honor and a prayer. Thank you.
With that being said, Understanding triumphant moments, family. Thank you, Dr. P. Sometimes in life, you must fail in order to succeed. But one thing must remain certain, that you never, under any circumstances, give up. Just Triumphant Moments. I'm T. Wood. I'm with my brother, Dr. P. Thank y'all.